Hello, hello, Shubham. What's up? How's it going?
Hey Mayank, good, good. Just planning to take a trip down to India, so just packing up for that.
Dude, you always do this to me. Whenever I ask this question, it's always about a new trip. I'm so jealous, but
It's
also happy for
summer.
you.
It's summer.
It's
When
summer,
your
right?
kids,
Yeah, you
when
travel.
your kids, when your kids in school, summer is
Yeah,
the only time you travel. So what are you gonna
that
do?
is true, actually. Yeah, yeah. Our kids are still in daycare, so yeah, we are planning for a trip to Vancouver in August. So not that
Very
bad,
cool.
it's nice. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. Shubham, let's talk about you today. As an engineering manager at Amazon, what do EMs do at Amazon? Because I've heard something very interesting. The way it works is very different. So I think I can learn a lot about from your experience. We haven't spent too much time on this, and also we can figure out the nuances of EMs across. Plus, what has been your personal experience, what you like and dislike, because you also work with other organizations, and your journey. Let's do that. I'm really excited to talk about that today.
Oh,
Awesome.
I'm always excited to talk about myself. Let's do it.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about you then, as an engineering manager at Amazon. What's next for you?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I think this would be a fun conversation. I think my some of the best buddies I've had have been in product, right? Because we just work closely so much, and you learn how to interact with them. Let's do this. I'm happy to
Okay,
kind
cool.
of jump in.
Let's start. All right, let's start with the preview. What is an engineering manager? Like, what do you do, man, at Amazon and also in general? Just to describe that.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So let me take a step back. I think just generally, the definition of engineering manager broadly basically is um, a domain specific manager that focuses on engineering, right? So that knows how to manage the development process, that knows how to manage engineering processes, because it's very hard for somebody who has not gone through the pipeline, which basically means if you've never been an IC, it's very hard for you to go in and start managing an engineering team because you don't understand how they operate. And so that is why you'll see this across the board in any domain specific field, that they prefer managers who come through the pipeline, right? And so you basically have to start as an IC, individual contributor. You start as an engineer, and then you walk your way through. That's what I did over a decade. My last company, I kind of was a director. I started as a software engineer, walked my way up, and then I joined Amazon. Here, my title is a senior STM. Now, you could have multiple titles. Different companies have different titles, but basically, what this means is you're a you're one of the senior most managers for engineering and software development. This
Mm-hmm.
role, especially at Amazon, is a general manager role. It allows you, what it does is it allows you to manage any roles that are attached to the process of software development, which means it would take technical program managers, individual contributors, all the way through from software engineer one to senior to principal. It would also allow you to, in some cases, manage product managers and a team of product managers, right? And so it's a very kind of cross functional role. And the next promotion from here is basically a director, which is again like a director at Amazon is also cross functional. A director owns a whole business line in most cases, which includes multiple different senior managers and other ICs who are doing multiple different roles.
This is interesting, Shubham. I think one that the EMs I have worked with so far, they're generally handling just the ICs and helping them grow, helping them unblock, managing the larger tech conversations. But it's interesting that Amazon is not just about managing the ICs and the team, but beyond that, it's also the technical project managers and so on and so forth. I think it's a larger scope there, which is quite interesting. Cool. I want to rewind a little bit and really want to understand your path towards this. Like, how have you come to this destination? Like, what is required to get to this path? I know you have some very interesting, unconventional aspects here as well. So let's start.
The first um, the first degree that you basically have to take for to kind of come into this conventionally has been computer science. That's where I started, right? You go into an engineering school, you do a 4 year engineering degree, and that sets you up to basically be a software engineer. I decided to come to US and get my master's. This was back in 2010, and so I spent 2 years finishing up my master's. And then
Where did you go?
once you
I know
come
you were in
out
the
of
East
either,
Coast. Where did you go to for masters?
I was on the West Coast. I
Oh,
went to
West Coast. Oh,
USC,
cool.
so I got my
Oh,
master's at
lovely.
USC. Yeah,
Oh, Los
I
Angeles.
was in LA for I
Yeah,
was in LA for 2 years.
yeah,
So yeah, I think after that, basically my wife was doing the same thing here with you, right? So like one of us
yeah,
had to
yeah. We're
move.
studying in the
So
same
she
school,
was up here in
Colombia.
Colombia. You guys are the
Yes,
same
yes.
school, right? Colombia.
Yeah.
So one of us has to had to move. So I decided to move, and so now I have more friends at Colombia than I have at USC.
I clearly it's the opposite for us.
So
My wife moved to the
yeah,
West Coast, and we're in San Francisco, so we just did the opposite. But yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was basically the start of the journey, right? Like, so I finished my master's in computer science, and then I started as a software engineer. I worked for like as an intern for a couple of small startups, but basically I started with a fintech firm as the usual role, and they call it across the board, is software engineer one, which is basically the term for a starting software engineer out of college. Any software engineer in most of the tech firms across the board starts at software engineer one when
gotcha.
they come out of college. So that's what I started, right? It's an IC role. The first year, you basically just learning the trade, right? Like you get to do small things. You're lucky if you get to fix bugs most of the times, right? Like that's all you do. Maybe you'll get some small features here and there, but you're writing code all day in day out, and just learning how to write code and how to think about code, right? So
Interesting. So I think that's a very traditional route. You came for a master's, you did that, and this will be then every podcast. So I don't want to harp too much on this journey now. This is very clear.
yeah,
Uh, After that, you go for your MBA. You go to Yale. What's your
yeah,
thinking? Like, I want to understand more. Like, tell us more about you, and then the reason of for doing an MBA. That too from Yale. It's like one of the best in
yeah,
the world. Yeah, I just want to understand. I'm always curious to know that
right.
transition.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think like I'll also give you a little bit of nuance of like how this happened. So
Yeah,
when you're growing through the ranks of software engineer, so you basically usually have one, two, three, and then like there are other titles, whatever. Um, there is a choice you get to make at some point, right? And that choice is a very interesting choice because you basically can grow in most companies as an IC, or you can move to manager, right? And it's a very a lot of people don't understand this, but like historically it was always that you could only grow as a manager. This in the last 15 years has been broken down. Most companies now acknowledge that you don't need to be a manager to grow as an engineer. You can keep growing as an engineer, you just get more responsibilities as an IC. But as a software engineer 2 or 3, you have to make up your mind whether you want to go one track or the other track. Either you can grow
correct.
as an IC and you can just become a technical architect or whatever you want to do. The other track is the manager track. What is very interesting is people don't realize that it's not the same job. And that's like it hits you once you take on that. So I took on the first time I took on the management responsibility of an engineering team was back in 2013 or 14. And it hit me very quickly when this engineering team scaled from 4 to 6 that I didn't code anymore. I did not do anything that I was supposed to do as a software engineer. And so it was just a new role. And I had to basically unlearn and relearn what it means to be in this industry and what I needed to do and what my personal role was. So it is very interesting because the one other thing you quickly learn is as a manager or as an engineering manager, very um, your output in most cases is zero. You don't do much, right? Like you're used to doing a lot of coding, you're used to doing a lot of like you're checking in files left and right, and you see the numbers, and you can tell people I wrote 5,000 lines of code. As an engineering manager, I don't have that output, right? And so suddenly you're
Hmm.
like going from this like super productive person in your head to like doing nothing except meetings. but you have to reconfigure yourself. It's like your role is not to do, your role is to
Yeah.
help people do, right? And help people grow, and help find the next leaders, and help find the strategy, and help tie everything up together, and like just step back and let them do their job, and like you go and remove their roadblocks, so you're not supposed to be in their way. So that's a very interesting change that happened. I
But look,
also
let me add a few thoughts
I
on that.
think
I just feel as I
yeah.
saw multiple EMs in my journey, you know what I saw. Like you're so right that that's. I mean, you're being very introspective. That that's how it should be, and we should remove blockers and all that good stuff. But some people don't do that. They still think their productivity is actually in their mind, in the subconscious or in their conscious mind. It's about coding. It's about doing the job they were doing earlier, and it leads to all kinds of side effects in the team, which could be them being very, I don't know, the word is like too micromanaging with their team members. It shows up in the health of the team and so on and so forth. So I really like the way you approached it, by the way, that you really have to unlearn things, unlearn the definition of productivity. And but did you get this mentorship when you just move from transition a little bit? Like, okay, so this is very good transition, right? Like, how do you surround yourself with new set of mentors in this space now? Because look, it's a different style of
Yeah.
operation, different skill. And we'll come back to the Yale story after that. What happened, like
Yeah.
when you did the transition? What happened to your mentorship circle and so on and so forth? And then also about then come back to Yale again.
Yeah. And that's a good point. I think um, part of the introspection that happened did not necessarily come just from myself, right? What ended up happening was I started interacting with leaders that were cross-functional leaders, right? So suddenly, when you become an EM, you're not just talking to engineers, or you're not talking to other engineers or other engineering managers. You suddenly start talking to product managers, marketing managers, senior directors, director of product, right? Like director of sales or some sales guy. And you're starting to kind of open up your horizon, and you're looking at, well, there's more to software development just writing than just writing code, right? And what are those pieces that happen before and after a line of
Mm.
code is written? And as you think through that, what happened to me is like I found some really really good mentors in some cross-functional people who were not engineers, and those were the people who helped me the most, because they taught me the importance of everything else outside of writing that line of code, like how
Mm-hmm.
important it is to do the pre and the post work to that line of code to be able to actually be successful in the
Mm.
business of software,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
that just like it opens up so many doors in your head, because you suddenly realize, yeah, it's more than that. It's more than just writing
Yeah.
lines of code, right?
Yeah.
So,
I think the point of the first step is to understand the why now versus just the how of
yeah,
it, and then you start focusing. Love it.
100%.
Okay, what's the Yale story? Why Yale? Why an MBA at
Yeah.
Yale?
So it's interesting. I think as I grew through the ranks, right? So basically, I always thought I liked management, and so I wanted to go in that field. And I was lucky enough that I got more opportunities over the time, and I essentially made director pretty quickly, like in 8 years. And I had a team of 100 people reporting to me, and when you kind of reach there, you start asking a question in your head. It's like, well, what's next? Like, where do you want to go? Like, how do you want to do? And most of the people who
Mm.
were reporting into me at that point were all like still engineers, right? All either engineering managers or engineers. And while I was like going through this introspection, I think I realized that I wanted to stay. Like there are a couple of questions I asked myself. Like, what do I want to do over a long term? Do I want to stay in software? Do I want to keep doing engineering? What else do I want to like? How else do I add value? Right? And I think the answer that I found was I wanted to gain skills to be able to manage cross functional teams, because I have figured that to go from the place I was to add more value, I have to also kind of expand myself and kind of add more um, to what I bring to the table, so that I can essentially add value to the final customer. So not just doing engineering, not just doing engineering management, but maybe even interacting with project managers, with product managers, managing that process, being able to manage the full cycle of software development end to end. Can I be a general manager for end to end products, right? AWS has
Mm.
a lot of roles like that. And so that's what prompted it. And I realized that there was a gap. Like a lot of times when you do introspection, what is really important is to identify what you don't have, right? So I knew what I had, and then I realized what I don't have. I didn't know how finance worked. I didn't know how companies actually operate outside of like software development. How does the marketing work? What does it mean to market a product? How do you look at your competition? Like I didn't know any of that, right? Now that's not to say that you can't learn all of this. Like that's 100%. Like, you don't have to go to school to learn this. Like, you can just read it yourself. I just felt that there were two things that made me choose Yale. One was the structured learning. Like you just cram that up in 2 years and you have to do it. So you learn a lot in that process, right? Second is you learn more from your peers than from your professors. And so that is why I went to Yale, right? Like you just find these people around you who are just so smart and who are doing so many different things. And now I'm very fortunate to call a lot of them friends. And I learn every day from them. Like I've graduated from Yale, but I meet them every now and then, and every now and then they'll tell me about like all the cool things they're doing, how they're doing it, what. And so I'm growing every day now, right? So this kind of circle that I have of mentors, you know, is like pushing me to do more, to learn more. So that's
Got
kind
it.
of the Yale story, maybe.
Let me ask a very contrarian question. As I look at this, like I don't think Yale or any MBA or meeting people outside is about making yourself a good manager or a, like even for me, like when I go meet people or think about a let's say a new course or whatever, it's not about me making myself a better product manager. It's more about something else that's going on in my mind. Really, like it's something orthogonal to my current work. Is there a little bit? Is there a part of
Yeah.
you that wants to do something different than being an engineering leader that pushes you to try this podcast or try an MBA or try meet a private equity partner in New York, which you have told me. So I'm just curious, what's that like for you as the engineering leader? I understand that
Yeah.
traditional route and everything else you mentioned. I'm sure the story until now is very similar to a lot of other EMs, right? Minus the Yale part. But there's a side of you which also wants to explore new areas. Uh, Tell me more about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's interesting. I think so. As you grow through the ranks, right? One of the things you realize very quickly is the only people that survive and thrive for a long time are the one who have the ability and the grit to reinvent themselves time over time, place over place, right? And just constantly like pushing themselves to be like the new them, right? Whatever that means. And
Hmm.
what that takes for me is looking at new things and avenues and just learning and growing. It doesn't have like the answer to me doesn't have to be no, I'm not going to be an engineering leader, right? That's not the answer. Like what I think the answer for me to be is can I be a better engineering leader if I know more about finance? Can I actually, let's just an example, like let's say I did my MBA in finance, right? So
Hmm.
can I be a CTO of a fintech company? Maybe. Can I actually build a fintech app and be a CEO someday? Sure. Like so, like I'm just saying, like you just open up these horizons, right? Like so, you're not looking at it from a perspective that I don't. I think sometimes when people do new stuff, one of the things feedbacks I've heard is like, oh, do you not like your current job? Is why you're looking at something new. I don't see at it like that, and I've seen like a lot of the really successful people that I look up to and I've met, like including you sometimes, right? Like my wife, right? I
We,
these are like in my current circle, right? Well, you've done
yeah,
it. You've done it, right? Like you've done it too, right? It's not we like you guys have not reinvented yourself because you didn't like what you did. It was because you
yeah,
wanted to do more, because it was always
yeah,
about finding who else can you be, what else can you do,
yeah.
like just stretching yourself further. And so I think like that's how I look at it essentially.
I like it. You know why I asked a question? Because I really, really respect and believe in reinventing is a good word, obviously, but also about cross discipline or you know learning orthogonal skills without thinking about the outcome.
Yeah.
A good example I was thinking about, like when you're talking about the story about reinventing yourself, is I met the CTO at Plaid. I think once I met him, Jean Denis Greze. I don't know how to say that in the French accent, but he goes by JDG. Check him out. He's a CTO at Plaid. Plaid is like Stripe, but for not credit cards, but banking, like the real checking account that we have. He did his master's, a bachelor's in computer science, master's in computer science. Then JD he did law school at Harvard Law School, and then he was, I think, an investor. Then he went to academia, and then he's now the CTO of one of the hardcore tech companies, and he's a lawyer. So I think my point is,
Yeah.
when you think about talking to him, the perspective is very different. It's not about that all engineers are great. It's more about diverse perspectives are great, and I actually like that point of view where we after a point forget, we just assume that we can only be good engineers or good lawyers or good musicians. But the good ones, the great good ones, are those who keep evolving. The great ones are the ones who actually reinvent themselves in a completely new field. What's your new reinvention? So, okay, from engineer to manager, leader, what are you pursuing then? What's your next milestone that you're focusing on? Not as a checklist
Yeah.
milestone, but what are you thinking of right now? What's on your mind?
Yeah. It's like my wife will kill me if I answer this question because I just came out of grad school and she's like, you're not doing anything else except
Don't tell
taking
me you're
care of
on a
the kids for
PhD
the next
now, but
couple
you
of
go for it.
years. No. No, I think for me, right, like there are two things that I'm trying to actively do, and I think it'll reflect in some of the books that I'm reading these days, right? So I've gotten more deeply interested in just the world of finance, right? Especially private equity. You and me have talked about this, right? Like
Yeah,
I really kind of want to learn. I spend like next 3 4 years just learning everything possible about private equity, how it works, and like how do actually they fund startups, how do startups grow, like what does it take to be from like a small mid-size or a small company to a big company. What are the different challenges in the process of finance, right? I understand the software side of it, but I think what my in my head I still have those gaps around the finance, and so it's like that's something that I'm super interested in right now. In that plus the second is that I've started really like nailing down, and I've I have a list of books that I'm going through, is the world of strategy and like the world of theoretical strategy, not just like the world, like how we talk about strategy is just I understand tech so I can put together a tech strategy, but like what does it really mean to build a strategy? What are the mental models you can use? How can you reuse them? Can you have some frameworks in your head around how to talk about strategy? How do you think about competition? As I said, like how do you think about the market? How do you think about placing yourself in the market, right? And I think that these two disciplines are what I really want to kind of like nail down in the next 3 4 5 years. So that's what I'm focusing on right now. I don't know where it's going to take me, as as you and I just talked about.
yeah,
I'm not doing it because it's going to take me somewhere. I think
yeah.
it hasn't piqued my interest, and I'm just like I'm going to
Love it,
focus on this for the next 5 6 years.
love it, love it, love it. Uh, there are very few engineering leaders who will give their answer that they want to learn about private equity. By the way, I know when you mean by learning, it's not about just reading the book. You're meeting people from the private equity industry. You're meeting the partners of the best and the biggest PE firms in New York area, which you've also inspired me to do that. I actually, after we met in New York for the drink, I've done the same thing. I've been meeting some of the PE partners just to learn about the space, because I think there's so much to uh,
Come on.
of course, learn and do together if you bring your expertise from the
Yeah.
technology execution world to the real B world. Okay, coming back to the career part now.
The
Amazon.
one,
Yeah,
the
go
one
ahead. Yeah, yeah,
before we go there, I think the one thing I'll tell you is I think that is also this insight came to me like pretty recently, like maybe 2 3 years ago. But a lot of people, like, sometimes when they look at roles, they don't realize um how uh, shared the common understanding and the day to day of senior roles are. Like the CTO and CMO are almost doing the same things. And so that is why it's very easy for somebody who has a good understanding to go from a CFO to CEO to, like,
Yeah,
maybe like do other things,
yeah,
because
yeah,
these some of these roles at a senior level, this is
yeah,
like, if you have a director of product, for example, or a director of engineering, they
yeah.
are doing something different. There are some parts of their roles is different, but like
Yeah.
most of it is the same. And so that
Decision
permeability
making.
between those two roles is
Yeah.
very high, very, very high.
I also feel you make a good point. You also feel someone who has been through all of those roles will be a great holistic product leader because I mean, it's very hard to find that, by the way, unless you're a startup founder who has seen it through and
Yeah.
taken to a unicorn IPO because you do everything. Zuck could be one of them, but of course, he has been trained by the best in the world as well.
You know,
Uh,
but
uh, Go ahead.
right? Right? Like, the CEO, the way I think Nestle or PepsiCo and then General
Yeah,
Motors
yeah,
used to, like, basically build up CEOs is exactly what you just said. They would have
yeah.
them do all the C-level roles before
All
they
the
move to
things
CEO, right? They would be
exactly.
like like
Yeah,
they would be like CMO, CFO, and like it's
agree.
because they
I
want them to
agree.
learn what it means to manage the
Yeah,
company. So
the CEO I actually read a book about, which who actually went through this journey, is the CEO of Coca Cola, Neville Estelle. If you read his story, it's he has done everything. He has gone delivered Coke bottles in Africa. He has lived in, I think he's from South Africa. From there, he rose to become a manager of operations. From there to a senior manager, and so on and so forth. And then the CEO of Coca Cola. That pulse of that ground level can only happen if you've gone through
oh,
the grind and you understand. Lovely, lovely story. Okay, moving on to Amazon now, and then we'll move towards the end of the show. Uh, you've been here for over almost around 2 years now. What's unique? Like, what do you like about the culture there right now as an engineering leader?
yeah. I think this is maybe a little bit of a, common knowledge too, but I'll just repeat it. But I personally think that one of the best things about working at Amazon is the independence of thought, that, like, being a part of such a big organization, the fact that I can operate my engineering team with the amount of independence and, like, l- with the lack of red tape and the amount of independence that I have in decision making, it's just like boggles my mind every day. Like the way that the company is structured, top down, the idea of STO, which is single threaded ownership, is just distilled in the DNA, which means that no one else except my manager can, in like in good faith, stop me from doing some things, right? And so, like, what that
Yeah,
does is that allows me to basically make some big bets, that allows me to think big, that allows me to take my engineering team and take steps towards things that would make our future better, right? Like, and experiment a lot more, right? So it feels like a small startup when you start
yeah,
operating like this. So which is what one of the things that I absolutely love. And I've seen people. So for just comparison, I've worked at multiple different places, and I've worked at mid-sized companies also. A lot of times mid-sized companies don't have this much flexibility, right, in independence of thought. Like they get so bogged down with hierarchy and decision making and red tape on the top that, like, you can't make bold decisions, right? Well, Amazon, man, absolutely love this part about Amazon.
interesting. Do you also think the chance of at Amazon, the chance of, let me put it differently, the fact that engineering leaders can become overall P&L leaders is very unique to Amazon. That's not there in any other company. In most companies, not any other
Yeah,
company, but in most companies. Yeah.
yeah, and I think it pays off for them, right? Look at AWS. Like most of the general managers at AWS have engineering background. How do you think AWS is able to innovate so fast? Because everybody top down understands how tech works, and if you're selling tech, you need to know how tech works. And what that also on the other side, flip side, allows you to do is to basically keep everybody in your org accountable. So I know how tech works, so I no one can tell me if it cannot or can happen in X number of days. I know if it can or cannot. So it's easy for me, right? Like just managing that part of it is easy. I can bring better results. And obviously, like it's not to say that you don't need software skills, you don't need like sorry, you don't need soft skills, you
Product
don't need
skills. Yeah, 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 yeah.
other peripheral skills that we talked about. And that's the reason why, as if you want to grow through the ranks, you have to be cross functional. You have to learn how to like do finance, you have to learn how to like do HR stuff, you have to learn a lot of other things. But just generally, I think like if you have an engineering background, it helps.
I don't have an engineering background. Can I be a good engineering manager?
Well, I guess you found the next best thing. So
Oh my god.
uh,
Oh my god. Look, somebody asked me this question. I was interviewing someone, and then um, I don't know. Somehow it came up, and I told them, "Look, anybody in this world can do any job. It's about a 6 month transition, unless it's about a real hard skill, like you're
yeah,
a doctor doing an operation, or a rocket scientist doing something crazy with mathematics and uh, space science. I just feel decision making is starts and leadership starts the day you're born, and we've been adding layers of leadership with everything we do, even with you and me, us raising children, right? Doesn't it teach us
100%.
patience every day? uh, so
Every
I
day,
really
every
believe in
day.
your philosophy that reinventing us is number one takeaway from me. Reinventing us is important, not marginally, but substantially. Think differently, learn something new, acquiring knowledge. And second is like most of us can do, at least in this tech world, can do most jobs, and it's more about us
Most of the
pushing,
jobs.
pushing there and
Yeah.
really, really trying it and see how it goes. Bro, great chat today. Love to hear the journey within Amazon for the next pod sometime. But it was a good start from how you think, how you've gotten here, what's your philosophy of life. I really appreciate that. Cool. Next time,
Cool.
what should we do?
Next time we'll do
Oh,
you. We'll talk about your
oh, do we?
journey.
Okay. All right. Let's do that. Cool. Thank you, everyone. Until then, bye.